chapter. We still didn't really.
Well, it's 9:02. I think it's time to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's special NCLUG presentation for NCDOT's OpenX Update Week. OpenX refers to all the different Bentley Connect Edition brands, and NCLUG is proud to be a partner with North Carolina Department of Transportation to bring these unit updates to you. This session's webinar will be session number 4, which is going to include photogrammetry and location and surveys. But before we get started, let's take care of some housekeeping details. The webinar is a presentation. All attendees will be muted. Please remember to mute yourself and do not mute all. At any time during the webinar, you can submit your questions into the chat box. And as time allows, I will have Pam read and host those field those questions to the presenter to answer during the question and answer session at the end of the presentation. We will be recording this webinar and will share the link after the event. NCLUG is offering PDH credits to those who have attended and registered to this live event. And at the end of the session or nearing the end of the session, NCLUG will put a link to in the chat. In order to receive PDHs, please fill out the evaluation on that link and be sure to download your PDH certificate that's provided in a link before submitting. And now I'd like to introduce Faith Driver with the Photogrammetry unit as our first presenter today. Good morning, Faith.
Good morning, and thank you very much. So when looking at what we wanted to present today as a unit, we wanted to go over what changes that we were going to make with OpenRoads. So I'm going to share my screen really quick, and hopefully you guys can see this. So the 3 main topics that I want to go over will be our compilation, our deliverables, and of course, project-wise. So for the most part, photogrammetry did not change. We are still going to draw what we see in the aerial images the day that a project is flown. What changes we did make are very minor, and we made them because of what we believe will be our final product that we deliver out to locations and any other customers. So for us, for our changes, the big things you'll notice is area outline. Area outline has always been a 2D feature, and with going into OpenRoads, we have made that a 3D feature. So that is a new feature that will be drawn on the ground and will be used in the creation of the terrain. So that was one of the first major changes that we made. And then the other change that you've kind of seen it probably go back and forth are obscured areas, and those were usually always open or from model to model, and these are now going to be closed shapes, and that's going to make it easier for edits for cutting in and cutting out LiDAR where needed. And element templates, this isn't really new for most, but it is new for us. We have not used them before, but we will be using them from now on. And then the terrain that will be inside of the final delivered product. So what I want to show you is kind of what you're used to seeing from us. And let's see how easy this is. Okay, so if you're used to getting our files, what you have always seen in SS4 is you have seen a 2D plan file, and you will see just the plan features, everything at a 0 elevation, and no 3D DTM features. And then the other file that you would normally get from us would be the DTMs. You would have our brake lines, our collected points, our LiDAR that's been cut in, and then you would also get a 10 file so that you could create whatever you needed for your surface. So this is what is the normal SS4 delivery. When we started the pilot projects last year, we kind of started talking with locations. They are our main customer and what they wanted to see. We could continue to deliver this. This wasn't a bad product to deliver. It's just if you wanted something different, now's kind of that time to make that change. So in kind of talking through the pilot projects and working through those, we did decide that we wanted to change our delivery. I will tell you, I will not guarantee that this will stay this way. I think this is like anything, as we start working in this, we may end up changing it. We did deliver an ORD file that has everything inside of it. So everything is now a 3D file and everything is delivered inside of one file. So now you have your plan, you have all your DTM features, and you have a surface that has been created inside of it. So when we changed the area outlines, we didn't want to have to draw something twice. So for us to make it a little bit easier with drawing, we ended up putting that one feature on the ground so that we could use it for the terrain creation. Again, we're not 100% sure this will stay the way it is right now. We've done a couple of pilot projects. We are still delivering in SS4. We do have the capabilities to go into ORD and deliver, but until we are requested to deliver in ORD, we have took our files back down to SS4 for delivery. Again, when location starts requesting that, we will start delivering. But we do have the capability right now to deliver everything in ORD. So I did want to mention that we are not just delivering everything right now in ORD. We didn't make that a switch over for our clients. We're trying to make sure that we wait for them to give us that go ahead. So the other thing I wanted to mention is we are still in 10.9. We have not moved up to 10.10. We know all the other units have, but we work with a third-party software, Hexagon, and we have not had enough testing with the 10.10 product to see how they are going to work together. So that's the reason that we stayed down. I believe we're the only unit that did stay down at this time, but we have to wait until we can get all the testing done with Hexagon. So we have not moved up to 10.10, and hopefully we will by the end of March is what we're looking for that. And then the last thing I wanted to go over was project-wise. You'll hear a lot of people talk about what they're doing, and we have not moved over to working inside of ProjectWise, and that is because of Hexagon. So we work in a non-managed workspace. We have to basically work off our local C drive for our workspaces, and we have not pushed up a workspace to ProjectWise yet. We are working on that, but again, you will have to get it through a zip file. We haven't done the testing inside of ProjectWise. Right now, we're using ProjectWise for file deliveries to get things out to our customers, and eventually with our PEFs for submittals and deliveries back and forth with them. So again, we didn't change a lot. We didn't have to change a lot. Right now, everything kind of stayed somewhat familiar. So there's not going to be a whole lot of changes in what we do and what we deliver, but there are a few. So any questions? I went through that quick.
Well, if you don't, Faith, thank you so much. That was some very useful information. And if anybody thinks of a question later for Faith, we will have a Q&A section at the end of this presentation where after everybody has presented, and you can ask then. I'm sorry, the name, okay, Faith, there is a question that came across. It says, what is the name of the combined FS and DTM file?
So we are still working on naming conventions in the unit for how we're going to be naming this as we go forward. We're hoping to have something out probably in the next month or two. We're waiting to make sure that as the pilot projects continue through that we stick with this delivery of what we're going to be doing. So we're going to work on getting those naming conventions, and when we get everything in place, we will have something that we can send out and push up to everyone.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Any other questions before I introduce our next speaker? Okay. Again, thank you, Faith. I do appreciate the information. It's very helpful. And now, please, our next speaker is going to be Emery Kincaid from Location and Surveys. And Emery, I'm going to let you take it away.
All right, thank you, Tonya. What I anticipated doing was give you guys a short history of what we've done, and then I'm going to turn it over to someone else. We anticipated being an ORD last year. There was a number of reasons that we decided not to. The biggest reason was the fact that we've lost a lot of personnel, and we really had, because of that lack of personnel, we were just really unable to create the training materials that we felt we needed. So last year we contracted that out, and we were fortunate to get Tim Merrill involved in this. Tim has put a lot of effort towards this. We now have we have the bulk of our training materials available. I won't say we have all of them. We have the bulk of them available online, and I'll demonstrate how we anticipate those going out. But right now I'd like to turn that over to Tim so he can really go through the steps we went to develop our training.
Thanks, Emery. I'm going to share my screen here real quick. And I just have a very brief PowerPoint to kind of give an illustration of what we've done so far. In 2021, early 2021, ESP Associates was hired to create a survey training manual. That survey training manual was going to be delivered in a PDF format, and it was going to be based on a workflow format, much the same as what we had in the previous GeoPack survey, which basically is to take a drawing from data collector to a, I'm going to use the term finished drawing that incorporates all of the survey and brings it in utilizing the ORD features. Originally, we were going to have a quick start guide. We thought that there would be a need for the ability for users to get in quickly and start testing survey projects. So we were going to make a quick guide. Along with the training manual, there was going to be videos based on each chapter that covered the same material as in the manual. And at that point, we really didn't know how we would incorporate all of that together, because we didn't really know at the time that this was created whether there was going to be live training done by NCDOT personnel or whether everything was going to stay online. And along with that, the last part of that contract had us updating the mapping manual that is used by Photogrammetry and Location and Surveys to the current ORD standards. So what changed during the creation of these training materials? We started to realize that those chapter-based videos were getting quite long and involved, and they were tough to scan through to get to a specific task that the user might want to get to. So Emery decided that what we would do is go into the manual and we would put hyperlinks at every subject matter in those individual chapters so that the person can go directly to the minute marker in that video for the subject matter that they're reading. And I'll just quickly display that here on my screen. This is the PDF, or one of the PDFs of the manual. And you can see here we just put in these minute markers that take you directly to that particular part of that chapter's video. And they're in multiple places throughout the manual. We did them in the places that we thought that people would probably really want or need those kind of viewings or those kind of videos. So those are currently done. And this was actually to replace the quick reference guide. After we started putting them in, it was decided that this would be a way for somebody to be able to find subject matters and do it quickly. So there was no need to continue on with the reference or the quick reference guide. What did we learn from the pseudo training? Well, that's the term we decided to call it. It's training through teams. It's not live, but it is a sort of live class. And we held one in December of 2021. And we ended up giving 2 classes. We didn't start out that way. We were just going to do the survey class, but we decided that the Delta training, which was designed prior to me leaving NCDOT, which was aimed at advancing existing CAD users up to the ORD level or the MicroStation Connect level, showing those people the things that are different, such as the ribbon, the use of annotation scale, and whatnot. So we held that, and it was a half-day class. We held that a week before we actually held the survey training class. Then we held the survey training class. We originally thought it was going to be a day and a half. It ended up being closer to the full 2 days. The original class in GeoPack was a day and a half. And at the end of that, we started to realize that the users that had been in this class were the high-end OpenRoads users who are already familiar with ORD. And that signaled that for the rest of the users, it might even be a longer class. So what did we learn from the team training class that was held? A week or so after we held the survey class, we invited those users to meet us online and to talk about what their impression was, the efficiency of the class, the content of the class, to see how they felt about it. During that class, we did not at all use the existing videos. This was a live training class or pseudo live training class, and we wanted to see what that would look like as we ventured forward. It was really kind of enlightening to find out that the older users preferred this pseudo team training because of the interaction that they had with the instructor. I felt that same way. I felt that way throughout my career at DOT. It was nice to be in class and instantaneously get the feedback from the instructor. But the younger people much preferred just having the manual and videos online. They were quite used to that in their studies from college. And so they thought, really, if you just gave us the manuals and those videos or those embedded videos, they liked the idea of self-scheduling that and being able to review, back up, and review what they'd missed. So we started to see if you will, a separation of preference. The Delta class was absolutely determined to be needed. Again, the Delta class is just that. It's just to show the differences in MicroStation Connect, like the ribbon and whatnot. And the guys who were in this class in December were already pretty familiar, but they felt going forward that the users in DOT and probably the consulting groups would appreciate and need to have that going into the survey, because the survey doesn't dwell. It has to move right along. We need the people to know where these particular functions are at. And additions and updates would be made to the manual for that Delta training particularly, and we have not completed that yet. It was an addition to what we were contracted with first. So we're now in the process of taking the Delta training manual and building videos and embedding those videos into that manual, and they will be posted up to the site so people can get to it. And the last slide I have here is, where do we go from here? The training manual is going to be posted to an NCDOT web page for public use. They're going to make it available at least for my history for the first time, to consultants and internal DOT people. And they will be able to get to the training manual and follow it through its entirety on their own if they wish to. Communication will be sent out by the location surveys folks to tell people when these are posted so that they can start going and doing their own self-training. The videos are already posted up onto YouTube, and Emery's going to show you here in just a moment that he's also included that on another site so that a person can go to it and just look at the videos if they wish to. They are in order and they've been posted and organized up on YouTube already. The Delta training class will be included in these new videos. We have not created those videos yet or embedded them in that manual, but we will be doing that over the next few weeks so that that can be included on this website. This website that Emery's making, it's a team site. I don't want to steal his thunder, but it's going to have a question and answers area for all users to be able to post. So you can see we're right now of the belief that we're not going to be holding any pseudo training classes as such, like we gave in December, but rather we're going to give this out for self-training. And this question and answer area of the teams will be there for users to ask questions that they may have about the content, but also to allow them to come on and say how they felt this training worked and if they thought their particular group might need additional training. And so this website is something Emery's got up and almost up and ready. And like I said, I don't want to steal his thunder. He's going to show that to you here in just a moment. Future training will be created for procedures that were not addressed in this manual. At the time the manual was made, there was a lot of things that still have not been resolved. Case in point might be annotation, and another one would be possibly sheeting. The surveyors have to make the right-of-way sheets. And so those processes have been pretty well defined in ORD by Emery and his personnel already. But we still have to include sheeting as well. And we're in the process of developing sheeting in conjunction with what Oak and Jason's group has already made. So we're trying to make those work in conjunction with what you would call, I guess, the default tile block. So with that, I think I'm through boring you good people, and I'm going to turn it back over to Emery.
Thank you, Tim. Just one moment. Let me get this up. There's 3 dates that I'd like you guys to keep in mind. Early next week, probably within the first week of March anyhow, we will provide a team site that will be open to all internal users as well as our PEF partners. While this site isn't public, it will not be difficult for us to give access to anyone who desires it. An email will be going out shortly to all our private firms that are on contract, requesting an email of a list of users that they would like to have access to the site. Roughly 2 months after that, we plan on having some live Q&As through Microsoft Teams, answering any questions that may have come up. You know, sometimes people prefer that interaction, so that's what we're trying to do there, is give that way so there can be a interaction between people. And in July, we anticipate that all new survey projects will be in ORD. This is a look at our team site. As I say, once we get the email list, we'll include everyone. I wanted to show you real quickly how we anticipate this being used. The first thing I ought to mention is if you use a work account and use Teams within your organization, you may have to log out before you can log into this site. That is hopefully a short-term problem. Microsoft is supposedly working on it to allow you to be able to be logged into more than one work account at a time. And I am told that will be later this year when that will happen. So it's going to be a minor inconvenience at first, but I think it'll work itself out. Most everybody is used to using Teams for their chats and video calls. The team works a little bit differently. First, you see you have the posts area. This is where we can have our conversations, and it works much the same as chat. You'll see that our first channel for this site is going to be ORD survey training. We anticipate opening this up with other channels that involve other things according to location surveys. However, we're early in the process and I'm not sure what those will be yet. The next thing you see is files, and that's typical of Teams. Currently, we have only training resources. If you go into that, you will see that we have the manual that Tim spoke of, as well as the training materials that were used or the source information that was used for the training videos. The thought is that the student will be able to download the zip file and have the exact same materials as the instructor, so they can start and pause the videos and work through the materials to see if they're getting similar results. Next page is a getting started page, and that's basically just a quick wiki that kind of drives you through what I'm showing you now. Shows you what each tab is for. The next four links or tabs that we have here are basically the information that you've heard over the course of yesterday. We have a lot of information, but getting that all into one place is difficult at best. We have a CAD workspace or a CAD consultants page. We have a ProjectWise page. We have a lot of different things, and it's really hard to get a handle on where you need to go for this. So hopefully this will help you in your dealings with ORD. The workspaces page is just that. It takes you to where the most current unmanaged workspace is. The training videos tab is simply the YouTube playlist with has all the training videos that we have developed. Bentley Learn Path. This is the survey learning path that Bentley developed. You will have to be logged in with your Bentley ID in order to access this, but we felt it was something that we needed to add to kind of keep everything together for what you might want. And then, of course, ProjectWise. ProjectWise is probably the most unknown thing to everyone. As you see here, it mentions a policy that was done in early 2020, and we're still really not where we need to be. In a lot of ways, I think when a project is created in SharePoint, the same file structure is created in ProjectWise, but I have noticed as of late that a lot of times the file structure on ProjectWise is vacant. So I think, and that's no one's fault. I don't want to imply that that's a problem, other than the fact that we need to communicate this better, and we really need to have some discussions on what it means to work in ProjectWise. Some people feel that you're in it working it day to day. Some people feel like I work on it on my end and then I push it up. Both of those can be right or wrong, but I do think we all need to get on the same page where ProjectWise is concerned. You'll notice the next tab, and this refers to the Q&A that Tim was talking about. If before we have the live Q&As a couple of months after this is opened, if you have a question, you can simply post it here, and we'll do our best to answer everything that you post. The nicety of this is the fact that when that question is asked, someone else can really pull from that information, and we may not be answering the same question over and over. And then we have one more tab, which is a feedback page. This is for everyone, including our private partners. We want to know what we can do to improve upon this, because we want to give you what you need to do the job, because at the end of the day, we all work together. And that's everything I have. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Thank you, Emery. I appreciate that. Some questions have been coming through as you were speaking, and there's, if you don't mind, I'm gonna kind of scale back and go to some questions that came through for Faith. And I am, you got them? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the first question that I have, and this one was directed towards Faith when she was speaking, or it was right when she was finishing up. It says, are you still planning on using SS4 along with ORD when you were compiling in ORD? I think that's what the question is. Faith, did you understand that question?
Yeah, I saw it when it popped up, but Tim had already started, so I was waiting. So we are actually compiling in ORD with ISSD. So we have completely done away with SS4 and ISSD for compilation. And we also do all of our edits in ORD. We are literally, SS4 is just what we take it back down for delivery, but everything else is done inside of ORD.
Okay, perfect. I hope that answers the question. If not, then if you want to ask another question, I apologize. I can't see who it was that sent that question. The next question that I have, and I believe this is for Faith as well, it says, will the files that Photogrammetry delivers be incorporated into our survey drawings the same way?
I actually think that's going to be an Emory question of how they actually are going to use our files in the final surveys.
The answer to that would be, it's going to be a very similar process. It won't be exactly the same, but the tools that you have, and in fact, typically when we merge data in, we use the reference manager and we merge it in, and you still have that ability. So it's very similar.
Okay, excellent. Emery, this is another question for, I think it's for your team site. It says, is the Q&A section a discussion board?
You know, it's early on, Tonya. I would suggest that if someone has a question, to ask it there. However, the discussion should probably go into the post area. Okay. But comments can be made on anything. So there's a lot of things to say that we understand 100% how this will be utilized. No, we don't. There's a number of tools there, and one of the things that we'll do is over time we'll migrate it however we need to answer everyone's questions and make it work.
Okay, like for someone to go back and reference, see if, you know, like just a frequently asked question kind of section.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at now, being a similar to a frequently asked question, other than the fact that I don't want you to send me an email, me just turn around and put it in as a question. I really want this to be a live, ongoing thing that where we can communicate with each other. Because honestly, I don't have the personnel here to answer a lot of the questions. So we may find that the answers actually come from possibly other consultants, possibly someone from our field offices, maybe even someone from the division or roadway.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just kind of a more interactive, all participants kind of participating in it.
Correct.
Okay, excellent. So next question, it says, once photogrammetry and location and surveys go to ORD, will all feature definitions be associated with all elements in the file for roadway to target like walls, right of way, building, that kind of stuff?
I know currently everything that we produce in location and surveys will have feature definitions associated. I'm a little uncertain about the information we receive from photogrammetry. Faith might be able to handle or address that better. I believe, though, I don't want to put words in her mouth, that we've got a little bit of an issue with XCOM software.
So as of right now, no, we do not have feature definitions. I know it's been discussed and we've kind of been waiting for some direction as far as if it needed to be. So if that is something that needs to be put in there, then that is something that we can address. But as of some of the earlier discussions, as we have not been asked to include that. So if it's something that we need to start including, we just need to be informed and we can start working on that.
Okay. Excellent. Are there any photogrammetry specific instructions for setting up workspaces in ORD 10.9?
As of right now, there is not, and that's because the anticipation is to go to 1010 within the month. And once we have everything set up for 1010, that's when we will start putting those instructions out there.
Okay. Next question is, has the final deliverables been determined? It just says it would be helpful if we knew what our end product would be.
We've been talking about that here lately. We do know that we need to produce some documentation on this. We anticipate that by the time we do the live Q&A in May, that we'll have documentation for that. Currently, the thought is that we will be delivering a file, just a file that'll be considered an FS file, that it will be a combination of everything we've delivered in the past.
Okay, so 2D and 3D.
Yes, that's the current mindset that we have.
Okay, still working through naming conventions and that sort of thing.
Yes.
And Emery, if it is going to be in that final FS file, is that going to be something that's going to include both photogrammetry and location surveys data? How are we going to be able to tell the difference? That's a question. I'm not stating that. Saying that kind of more for confirmation. Is that the expectation that is that one FS is going to have everything in it?
Yes, it will.
Okay. And how are you going to know the difference between like what's been field located and what's been compiled from photogrammetry?
Well, in the past, you really didn't know that. If you were looking at what the 2D graphics that they produced, there was for example, let's say they located an edge of pavement and then we located the edge of pavement. Symbology was the same. And it's going to be no different here. There will be ways of doing it right off the cuff. I don't know what the best route would be. If we process our field information, it will be included in a field book where photogrammetries will be outside that field book. But there are still a few things to be worked out. But it won't be exactly easy to see. In the DTMs, for example, they used to locate their edge pavements as a brake line. So it's the purple dashed line.
Mm-hmm.
That will no longer be going on. So there is going to be some definite differences in the way it looks.
Okay, so I guess kind of like wait and see that those details haven't been completely ironed out yet. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think it's just going to take time to absorb what it is and how you look at it. Probably if I was to, I'm not an ORD expert by any stretch of the imagination. And it's hard to find someone who you could even consider is. So we're looking at a new piece of software. There's probably mechanisms for us to determine some of that. I just don't know what it is right yet.
Okay, fair enough. I did want to bring everybody's attention that Ian had posted the link for people to do their evaluation and PDHs. And then the next question is, how will the attendees be able to access the NCDOT teams and the training manual? Are the attendees of this meeting going to receive an invite to access it? That's something you were about in your presentation, correct?
Yes, like I said, within the next week or so, all PDFs that have contractor location surveys will be requested to provide us an email list of the people they want to have access. If you are not on one of those lists and you'd like to have access, you can simply just email us. I probably should have put my email on here, But in chat, I will put an email address for everyone to send who is not on those contract lists. Can speak.
And so this will be your individual email that you're going to post?
No, it'll be the email to my group. That way,
Okay.
There's only two of us in the group, but at least that's better than it all coming to me.
Understood. You got enough, I'm sure. So next question I have, are contours created by location surveys for everyone to use? Will the TIN file still be provided in ProjectWise?
The TIN file is now considered a terrain model in OpenRoads, and yes, it will be there. Simply a toggle to be able to turn the contours on.
Okay. Next question is, when we merge photogrammetry into the ORD file to create a terrain model.
I'm sorry, Tony, can you repeat that, please?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Somehow I was muted. I apologize. So it says, when we merge photogrammetry into an ORD file to create a terrain model, do we put it in a field book, or do we just copy it in and rerun the model?
That's a good question, and over time that may change. Right now, we're currently not putting it in the field book, so it is separated from our survey data that way.
I can speak to that if you want me to, Emery.
Okay, go ahead, Tim.
In the manual, we're using a graphical filter to include the photogrammetry data in, much the same as you used to use extract graphics in Geopack. You can include it into the terrain, or you could create your own separate terrain depending on whether it intrudes into the existing data or not. One of the things that Emery and I have been talking about going forward is the creation of these deliverable files and what should be in it. As Emery said, right now, the thought is there'd be a single file. Going forward, it would be, I guess, a final survey would be its title, but it would have all of this in it. The terrain might be in a separate model. And we're probably going to ask through that team site questions of people as to what they would like to see. For instance, the existing alignment that location oftentimes created and in the past was in a separate file that was referenced, knowing that as the process went through design, that existing alignment would become less and less usable as the proposed alignment will take its place. So should that be in a single file in its own model? Should it be in a separate file that we can detach in the future? All really good questions, but as of right now, the photogrammetry data would just be included through a graphical filter.
Excellent. Okay, cool. Thank you. Next question is, on the Teams site has all the tabs, on the Teams site that has all the tabs, is the Teams application the same as Teams we're using now? And how will we get to the Teams app?
Yes, it is the same. Let me share my screen just a moment, please. I'm a little slow, so bear with me. Before I do that, I got to go back to this one slide. I got a little quick, and I apologize for that. I had one final slide. 3 things that I really want everyone to take away from here today. If you don't hear anything else, if you don't have OpenRoads Designer, you better get it. Possibly Open Site Designer. It has the survey tools built in to it. It's a lesser cost, and I know some of our firms are smaller that do just strictly survey work, and it may possibly work for you. One of the things that we'd have to do is alter our workspaces just a little bit for that, probably. But that is something to be thinking about, and you really need to pursue OpenRoads Designer. That being said, you could possibly be receiving ORD files before July 1st. We have already had occasions where files came to us that the design had been done in ORD, and you may end up having a right-of-way staking job that you got ORD files. Well, those can be moved back, but in order to move those back, you really need to have ORD to do that. So again, I won't want to stress too much, but you really need to get ORD, and you need to be pursuing ProjectWise. And again, I apologize for not stating that earlier. Now, if I can shut this down for just a moment. You'll see here that I've got multiple team sites up. Once we get that list of emails, or you request access to this site, you will receive an email that says you have been granted access to this. And once you log in with your DOT ID, this is going to show up under this Teams option right here. I don't want to state that it's the black box and it's all magic, but it will appear once we include you into the site. All these tabs should then show up within this Teams area. Like I said, most people are accustomed to working over here in chat. That's where we do the bulk of our conversations and talking back and forth. But here's where this will show up under Teams. And one thing that you will find helpful, because I understand that Teams is a little bit of a, we do what's called the Google effect. We throw this software out without giving anybody any training, and we just see what sticks sometimes. And I think that's the world over. But I want to point out the help down here. You can go into help, and it will definitely help you get familiar with this product.
Thank you for that, Emery. Sorry, I'm trying to get back to the questions. And okay, so the next question that I have is, how are we covering computations that involve the tasks and location and surveys, i.e. property mapping, condemnation surveys, existing alignments, control, right-of-way, etc. Maybe this is covered in the manual. Just curious to see how we're going to flow without delivering a GPK file.
Okay. ORD is very graphics oriented, and as you say, we no longer have a GPK file to rely on, and that's not to say that we don't still have COGO. It's just all self-contained on the elements itself. If you remember seeing the presentation yesterday where Ethan was showing setting right away, and you had those rules that are on those graphics. And I'm sorry if you didn't attend yesterday. I think the video is open, and it might be a good thing for you to go back and review. But all these elements now have the information on them, so the GPK is really no longer needed. Everything still exists. It's just inside the design file versus a GPK.
And Emery, yes, the videos have been posted to the website.
And I'll expand a little bit on what Emery said there. In my PowerPoint presentation, we know there are some things that were not covered in this original manual. A case in point would be SUE, utilities, and the calculation of the length of them for contract purposes. Things like properties, and how do we in the manual we do show how to bring in properties, how you can follow a legal description and put them in as parcels, and then you can get your information according to that. But it's not completely in the manual yet. It's something that we're working toward. But like Emery said, without the GPK, which sounds catastrophic at the beginning, isn't so bad. The reports that are inside of ORD are really rather expansive, and Emery and his help have gone in and created some for the creation of right-of-way sheets already. But again, they're not included in the manual. This is something we're going to be putting out later because they're not, let's say, how do we want to call it, refined processes yet. And we're not 100% sure what the deliverables will look like, but we're getting really, really close.
Thank you. So the next question I have is, will the ORD-FS file be used as a design file or referenced in? I think that
I feel pretty certain that we'll
question?
just reference it the same as we've always done in the past and previously in SS4. Our information was referenced by roadway, and I anticipate everything being exactly the same in ORD. Maybe not exactly the same, but it'll be a similar process.
Okay. Cool. Makes sense. So instead of the current two drawings that we submit, a DTM and an FS, we will be submitting a single file containing both. And it does say, how will this work?
The FS file, if we go forward with what we're anticipating, the FS file will be a single file that'll have at least two models in it. One will be a 3D file or a 3D model that will contain all the 3D elements as processed from the survey data. The other model will be a 2D model, which will include elements such as alignments and property. And those models can then be referenced to each other. So it will honestly look pretty much the same, other than the fact it'll be merged data from the DTM and FS.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of the questions that I have. There is a statement here that Richard Hensley said. It says, we need to keep existing alignment data and document the existing right-of-way when it is retained, i.e. when the new right-of-way, the new alignment shifts to one side or the other. And that's the end of the comments and questions that are in the chat. So if there's any other questions that anyone may have, they're welcome to raise their hand, unmute, and ask those questions. I have someone raising their hand. Philip, do you want to unmute yourself and ask a question? Philip Shipman, you have your hand raised. Did you have a question?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Is there a place where I can go as a consultant to look at what these drawings will look like? You say that there'll be a 3D model, and then within that one drawing, there'll be a 3D containing the DTM file, and then, for lack of a better word, a current FS, like a 2D with labeling, property and stuff. Are there examples of what these will look like that we can access and visually see? Because I'm having a hard time in my mind seeing what this is supposed to look like.
And I can certainly understand that. It's definitely a big shift from what we've done in the past. SS4 was capable of doing models, but we really didn't utilize that. Currently, we don't have any examples, but I could probably get something worked up and post where everyone can reach it. And I'll stick it out on the team site once it's available.
Thank you.
And just a little bit of an expansion of that. In the previous versions, the deliverable, as you guys have stated, it was a final survey, which was 2D. ORD, and one of the biggest things that has come about in my life as I've been making this training manual is the realization now that of something that we never used before in GeoPack, as Emery was saying, and that is we used to just reference files together. And when we sent them out, the only thing you really had to worry about was whether the reference link was broke. Today, we have multiple models in single DGM files. And one of the points of confusion in the training manual was to write instructions that tell people you're going to reference the drawing that you're in to itself, but open it up at a different model. It's a concept that most users haven't been familiar with. And that's one of the things that I see as one of the biggest changes going forward. And it's really hard to put that into the training manual to instruct people about.
Okay, there is another question, and it says if we get ORD, is it a standalone or do we need to get other apps similar to MicroStation SS4 and GeoPack SS4?
I'm not an expert on that, Tonya. Perhaps Ethan is on here. It's my belief that if you get ORD, it is built upon MicroStation. So that in itself should probably be suffice for this.
Yes, ORD is standalone and it has all of the MicroStation tools.
And there is a comment here from Oak that says ORD has the same licensing as SS4, SS3, SS2, and SS10. Only MicroStation has the licensing separately. So Ethan, it's just confirming the same thing you just said. So, and that again, that's, oh, I have another question. It says, will the files become larger when utilizing the models?
I haven't really done a test to see how much larger they are. I can only assume that it will be a little bit larger. For instance, if we had an FS file before that was just 2D graphics and now we're adding the DTM model into that, I can only assume it's going to be larger, but I don't know that it's going to be significantly bigger.
And it's really
Okay.
going to depend on how much information you put into the file. So the more information you put in the file, obviously the larger it's going to get, but you don't have to worry about dragging a GPK file along behind you. So it's all self-contained, which is an advantage.
Excellent. We are coming on to 9:58, and if anybody still has questions, feel free to continue with the chat. But as far as a sense of time, just to make sure that everybody, we can consolidate this. I'm going to close the questions for right now. Again, you continue to put them in the chat and we can answer them through the chat if need be. I wanted to, as a reminder, to remind you that in order to receive PDHs, please fill out the evaluation from the link that was added to the chat window a while back. I think it was added by Patty as well as by by Ian. And when you fill out the evaluation on that, please be sure to download your certificate, your PDH certificate, before you submit your survey. Stay tuned for our next NCLUG presentation, which is session 5 with utilities. It will air today between noon and 1 p.m. In addition to all the sessions this week, please be sure to join us on Wednesday afternoon at 5:30 for the NCLUG OpenX games. If you have any questions, again, please add them to the chat and we'll get to those as soon as we can. Thank you, Emery, Tim, and Faith for your participation today. I appreciate all the information and hope everybody has a good day.
Thank you, Tonya. Thank you, everyone.